Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Staying in My Lane podcast. Today I have a special guest, my second cousin, Ashley. Hi, Ashley.
Hello, hi.
Hi. How's it going?
Good. Thank you for having me on. This
Yeah,
is so exciting. I've
thank you.
been binging all your podcasts. I can't stop. It's so good.
I've gotten a
We all
lot
want
of
more.
people messaging me that, which I feel I get really nervous because I'm like, do people really is it that relatable? I don't know.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely. It definitely resonates. I mean, it resonates in more areas than one. So
for
I think
sure.
what you're doing is pretty groundbreaking and pretty life-changing,
Thank
and
you.
just, advocating and providing all the resources. I can't, thank you enough. And I know a lot of other moms are in the same boat.
Thank
So
you.
keep doing what you're doing.
Absolutely. Well, I have you here today. Obviously we talk about a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
but I did a podcast episode recently. I have not dropped it, but by the time this drops, it will be out
Mm-hmm.
about generational trauma. And I shared a little
Yes.
bit about my personal experiences with it and how I've kind of broken that mold a little bit. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's really hard when you have family who make prejudgments or assumptions about you.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be really difficult and really lonely to kind of navigate outside of that role or be nervous to navigate outside of that because you don't want to, make anybody feel bad, but you also want to have those boundaries and do what's best for your family too.
Absolutely. Yes, girl.
Yeah.
Resonates completely. I mean, that's what we're dealing with right now. I mean, just to kind of dive into it,
Yeah.
we just recently went no contact with my mom and dad, which is unfortunate, but it was absolutely necessary for my family's peace, for my peace.
Yeah.
I've made peace with it. I've prayed on it. So I'm a devout Catholic, and I've, had numerous conversations. And there is a part in the Bible where it talks about if their view truly is distorted, their reality is distorted, it is okay to step away and give them grace, keep continuously praying for them. But you
Absolutely.
cannot endure that abuse. And I just had a birthday on March 1st. I turned 38. I had to do the math because I'm getting old.
Happy
It's
late
so
birthday. Well,
funny.
I already wish you happy birthday,
Thank
but
you.
happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. I know you're the baby, so you got a lot of catching up to do.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it was just kind of a realization, and it wasn't just a big epiphany type thing, right? There's all these
Right.
little things that, wait a second, like that's not normal. And you're learning and you're kind of, as a mom, I mean, you know this too, you know, what the capacity is of healing your inner child as you're,
Absolutely.
you know, growing and making this beautiful family that's, thriving, but you see kind of, wait, this isn't healthy. And there were a lot of incidences, but one in particular that just kind of was pretty eye-opening.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not going to subject my children to this, which I guess I should give some background. I have twin boys that are going to be, I guess, 9 July 29th. And
Yeah.
then my daughter Finley's 14 months behind them. So we are a busy household.
Yes, you
But
are. You have beautiful children, though.
thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, I always say they're, just little miracles, and that is a whole nother episode,
Absolutely.
someday. But
Yes, we will have to do that
um,
someday.
yes, for sure. But yeah, it's just kind of one of those things, I knew it was something that needed to be done, and it's done the best thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yes.
I think that it's really hard I've talked about this a little bit, how it's really hard to normalize generational trauma and
Mm-hmm.
being able to talk about it without feeling guilty.
Sure.
So, how have you been able to do that without feeling guilty or without feeling like that
Yeah.
shame that kind of comes with it?
Sure. And I felt that for the longest time because people are like, well, even, God bless them, my brother and sister, they're like, well, that's at the end of the day, that's your parents.
Mhm.
And that's tough. That weighs on your heart, but I think I mean, for me, and I know everyone's different, but just putting my true faith in God and like knowing like He's he's got this, I just have to be at peace with it. But, I do have those moments where, my heart breaks every time I need my mom moment.
Hmm.
And I guess I should clarify, it's my dad that's the narcissist, but in the end of the day, after much, debate and back and forth, my mom still will, go to his defense. And they've been married a very long time, but her view is also distorted. She doesn't want to hear it. She just wants to keep the peace.
Yeah.
But there's been some hurt there too. Um, but again, she's not the full-blown narcissist like my dad is.
I understand that. I actually did an episode too. I have not even released it, but I think by the time this comes out, it will as well. I did an episode on narcissism and I talk about
Mm-hmm.
how I learned about it and kind of what the characteristics
Yep.
are of it and how children are actually affected by that
Mm-hmm.
with their parents. So,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. I
that's a
wasn't
hard
gonna,
topic.
yes, very hard. I mean, to
Yes.
navigate that. But at the end of the day, I know my kids know we're doing the best for them, keeping them safe.
Hmm.
I mean, not to get into it, but like I've been criticized by my weight, my appearance, and my mom's justification when she's like, "Well, what does dad do? Are you gonna, talk to him again?" And every time I'm like, "Well, he did this, this, and this," and then she'll be like, "Okay, okay, okay." Like she doesn't want to hear it. Like there was one time after a pretty big incident where she literally asked me the question, "Are you gonna
Uh-huh.
talk to your dad again?" And this happened last, let's see, well, it was last year. And I was like, I don't think so. I was like, honestly, like, I'm not expecting an apology,
Hmm.
but I'm not going to subject my family to that. And as she's like, well, what is it? What is it that he did that was so bad? I said, Mom, you were there. We were literally on the tennis court, and you had literally front row seat to the whole thing where he was berating me about my weight, being out of shape.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, and luckily I don't have a complex about that, but what is that teaching your grandkids? Is that
Absolutely.
healthy?
Yeah.
And then he turned and started berating them on their, tennis skills and this and that. And I have neurodivergent. Two of my kiddos are neurodivergent. And, it's just, that doesn't sit well with me. It's
Right.
just,
And that's not
but
okay. That's not okay for
no,
anybody to do.
yeah, not okay. But here I am, telling her, well, you were there, but let me refresh your memory. It was this, this, and this. And as I'm telling her, we're in my house and we have an open, wide concept. As I'm telling her, she's like, okay, okay. And she literally walked out my door. So if that doesn't teach or tell me that I'm not doing the right thing, like, I don't know.
Exactly. Well, and those boundaries are so critical, especially when your children are involved and your children, they should not be seeing that dynamic at all. And I've
Yeah,
actually experienced that with some of my family members that, and people that I've had in my life that I don't have anymore.
sure.
Um, but I've had to create those boundaries as well because it's so not okay for children to be exposed to that or be even
Yeah,
drug in the middle. Because I've
yeah.
actually had people drag the child into the middle,
Oh, that's the worst.
and
Yeah.
that's not healthy.
Yeah,
So,
that's not healthy at all.
no.
Mm-mm.
So, being generational curse trauma breakers,
Hmm.
what do you feel like for you? What do you feel like is the most empowering like thing about doing that?
Well, I would say just really just listening to your God-given intuition and trusting that. I mean, women have intuition, and I'm always like, lead into that because that's something, but
Hmm.
trusting that, not denying that it's there for a reason. I mean, you have that there to keep you safe. Um, just using your voice and like what you're doing right now, like with the podcast, like you have so many different topics and you're making it so relevant and so like you're using your voice for the
Thank you.
good. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. And I wish there were more people like that. And at times, you got to go through the storm. And you and I both have been through, different storms, but nonetheless, just life changing, earth shattering. And
Absolutely.
I think that gives you that grit where you will just, persevere and, You know when enough is enough, and you do far too much work as a mom, as a parent, what have you, for a narcissist to just derail that. And that
Yes.
was kind of my eye-opening experience. Like, I put my blood, sweat, and tears into everything. When I go 110%,
Yeah.
ahead. And I'm not going to have, you know, words or, what have you impact my kids. Because at the end of the day, my number one job, and they will tell you too, is to keep them safe.
Yes. Yes. I talked about a little bit of like in the end of the episode of the generational trauma part 1, I talk
Mm-hmm.
about how I was always seen as like the baby and yes, I'm the
Sure.
youngest, but
Mm-hmm.
they don't see me past the age of 16.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas, like, obviously you do, you see me as a 34-year-old woman and
Yeah.
mom, but there's
That
certain people who I am related to who look at
still
me
see you.
as that little
Mm-hmm.
16-year-old where they're, oh, she doesn't know anything, or, even I've even been told like I have too many children,
Oh
or
my gosh.
or
Sure.
you shouldn't have gotten married, or it's just things like that that I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa, like it's
Keep your
hurtful
opinions to
coming.
yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's
It
hurtful.
is. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
I've dealt with a little of that too. And you know your
yes.
path, and you're going to follow that, and you're going to do it to the best of your ability. It's just unfortunate. I know I'm the middle child. I have an older sister and then a younger brother.
Mhm.
But I was always, it resonated when you were talking about it. The people pleaser, it was always conditional on love. It wasn't unconditional love like my kids get to experience. There
Yes.
was always strings attached. It was always, you know, stifled voice, too weak for having emotions. We don't talk, and I come from a very Italian Catholic family, so you don't talk about emotions. You sweep that shit under the rug.
Yep. Yep.
And
Absolutely.
that's not what we're doing in my house. We talk about emotions because we know how to emotionally try and teach our kids now the healthy regulation and everything that comes with that. But
Yeah.
it's just kind of one of those things. You're just gonna you can't just take the excuse, oh, well, he had a hard childhood or they had this happen. I did too, and I could have gone one of two ways. And like you, we chose
Mhm.
to empower and do the right thing and, lead, the
Lead by
most
example.
exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I talk about a little bit. I felt really isolated and lonely. Like when you're
Mm-hmm.
looked at as like the one that doesn't fit in, or the one that like is,
Black
oh,
sheep.
she's, yep, yep. And I think I used that term actually. I might,
Mhm.
maybe I didn't, but I think I was going to. And
Sure.
that's how I felt for a really long time. And I know there's certain people who would say things like, "Oh, like don't expose our family, like don't say anything that's going to hurt anybody's feelings." But like I always kind of go back to, well, what about my feelings? My
Yeah.
feelings have never been validated.
Uh-huh.
I've never
Yep.
had an apology, and I've had to learn how to accept an apology that I'm never going to get. And that's really hard to do, but it's just about accepting what is and moving on for yourself, because I talk about forgiveness is for you. It's not for that other person. That's for you to
Absolutely.
have closure.
Yep. Absolutely. That's beautiful. Yeah. And,
Yeah,
with being a mom, you don't get a second chance at raising your children. So
exactly.
to be present and just go hard for them, advocate for them as much as you can. I mean, oh, you
Yeah.
just know. It's just
Yes.
one of
Yeah.
those things. You're not going to take it lightly, and you're going to do everything in your power to, um, you know, set them up for success in whatever capacity that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just trying to find that balance too. I mean, I try and I've tried to have relationships, but
Sure.
when it's about control, or when they don't respond, and then, but then they'll talk to like my parents or whatever and ask about me or be concerned about me. Don't
Mm-hmm.
show that concern. Don't ask about me when you don't even talk to me. When
Yeah.
all my efforts have been denied, because that really is a
Mm-hmm.
power trip, I feel like.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And we're not playing that game anymore.
No.
That game's over. But I mean, you're right. It took me a long time to understand, what it truly means to forgive someone. I always wondered, how could I forgive someone who chose to not just hurt me, but continuously hurt me over 38 years of my life.
Hmm.
And think that, at some point as you become a parent, you're like, wait, this isn't normal. Like, this is not healthy.
Right.
And I'm going to change that. And I realized, like you said, it's the forgiveness is not about accepting or excusing their behavior, but it's about letting it go and preventing that continued behavior from destroying, not only my heart, but my kid's heart. And I mean,
Yeah.
you nailed it right there. Absolutely.
Well, and I think too, like a lot of the times, like the relationships that society deems like the most important are
Mm-hmm.
often the ones where we find the most pain. And so
Mm-hmm.
how to navigate that? Like not every family is going to be healthy, and
Sure.
I feel like a lot of like our parents' generation and up, like, or like, all of that and above, they've always
Mm-hmm.
been taught to push emotions down and just do what you're told. And
Sure.
yes, you need to have a certain amount of respect, but it's also okay to
Mm-hmm.
question things. It's also okay to do things differently,
Yes,
even though you
absolutely.
think that, or even though you've been told, not really necessarily think, but even though you've been told not to.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's where I think it is really important.
Yeah. That just jogged my memory. I mean, the respect thing, right?
Yeah.
So how often, oh, that's disrespectful, for speaking your mind or having a curious question or whatever. And respect is everything in a family, and especially in an Italian family, like respect is earned, not given. But again, it's always, in my case, unfortunately, strings attached, you boost my ego. And, that's just not a healthy thing. I want my kids to thrive. I don't want them to ever have to deal with what I had to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just think that's, you know, I just hope this resonates with people and they can be empowered by it and, set the proper boundaries. Hopefully, boundaries work. It didn't in my case. I think, we had a pretty rare case, but, I've tried so many times with my mom, oh, so many times, and I love them both. But at the end of the day, like, when she has to justify, like, after I'm like, this isn't healthy, my kids are picking up this habit, and yeah, I do far too much work for that to go to the wayside. But for her to justify, I'm sorry, this is a pretty vulnerable thing, but for her to
It's okay.
justify, well, it's not like he sexually abused you. Sure, there was emotional abuse, you got slapped around a little bit, but nothing to the extreme,
Yeah. Oh
But I'm
gosh.
like, yeah, I'm like, but mom, like, do you understand, like, dealing with emotional abuse for upwards of 38 years? That is far, and I'm not, now hear me out, I'm not
Yeah.
discounting any kind of sexual assault victims. That
Right.
is
Right.
horrendous and horrific. And so I can't even imagine how hard that would be to overcome that. But my therapist really resonated when she's like, and I had told my mom this, 38 years of one's life and trying to undo these habits that are not healthy, that you're just doing this to please. That is so much of a longer, drawn out process to get over than,
Yeah.
unfortunately, an incident like that, which is horrific and, rightfully so. But it's, but you can't say something to someone that already has a distorted view. So again, we're just going to have hard boundaries, love them from afar, pray for them,
Yeah.
and, just keep it moving. That's
Keep
all
it
we can
moving.
do. Just keep it moving.
Well, and I think
You know all about
sometimes,
that.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I think sometimes too, with like the emotional damage and that emotional, I would like a neglect and abuse, like that can almost be sometimes if I feel like, and like I said, like not diminishing any physical or sexual abuse, but
Hmm.
that can almost be more painful sometimes because those
Hmm.
wounds are not visible. And though,
Yep.
that pain just that goes really deep into your body and that really like
Sure.
just attaches onto your soul. And
Hmm.
obviously so does, abuse in general. I mean, obviously does, but that
Hmm.
emotional pain can be very, very, very deep and it
Oh
takes a
yeah.
lot of time to like really
Mm.
deal with that and
Soul
navigate
search.
those emotions.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I've worked at it and I feel truly at peace. Like, I just went to confession last weekend and talking to Father about it, and, talking to the scope. He's like, well, you can pray, maybe a phone call. I was like, listen, like, and I'm tearful and I'm like, and he told me, okay, now I understand the severity of this, and I'm going to pray for you. And we're going to just, you're going to have to love them
Yeah.
from afar. Exactly, biblically speaking. And, that's okay. And he even said, I'm going to keep you in your prayers. And I've never had a priest say that. So I'm like, thank you.
That
Like,
is
sure could use
amazing.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but that just affirms, like, he's like, well, are you truly at peace? Let me ask you that. I said, Father, I've never been more at peace than I am in my life right now, and how it, like, truly, I am seeing like God working miracles like every day. And it's just, I have this new sense of like this profound faith. I've always, like I mentioned, raised, you know, Catholic and everything, but until you weather a storm, and there's been, the past few years, you kind of have an
Yeah.
insight as to what all that is. That's another topic, another
Yes.
podcast,
We
maybe or
can
two.
we can do a
But
multiple. That's fine.
yeah, I'm like a plethora of information. And that's the thing. Like, I love that you're just advocating and like, helping others. And we need more of that in this world. So I just can't thank you
Thank
enough
you.
for
I've
just
gotten a lot of
having.
feedback actually, and I
Hmm.
was really nervous because like I dropped the autism episode, and it's
Sure.
more about the low functioning side, not so much
Hmm.
the higher end of the spectrum.
Yep.
But I wanted to normalize like the things with like nonverbal children and children who may
Hmm.
communicate differently with their behavior rather
Yes.
than kind of what society expects a child to do. And so
Hmm.
normalizing those conversations that may seem not,
Sure.
you know,
Sensitive and
normal.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
sure.
And so, yeah, thank you. It's good.
Yeah,
I think it's good to talk about these things. And I think,
absolutely.
like, our parents and everybody else, like,
Hmm.
above that generation, they don't want to talk about that. They don't want to
No,
address that because then that
nope.
means that they've done something wrong. But I
Yeah.
think it's also good. I think we're the generation that's like, you know what? Yeah, we have made mistakes, but like, let's take what we've done wrong or what we
Yes.
can do
And
better
learn.
and yes,
Yes,
and learn from it. Exactly. And that's not a
absolutely.
bad thing. That's
No,
the
no, not
misconception.
at all. Yep.
So,
Yeah. And my son, Grayson, he was diagnosed as, high functioning autistic. And we had him evaluated at 6.5.
uh-huh.
Um, And we've been navigating that. I mean, they don't use the term Asperger's anymore. I don't want to offend anyone, but
Right.
his doctor was like essentially like he's going to be a CEO someday. He could be a doctor. Like this kid is going places, and I always knew that.
Hmm.
But to get people to from the outside, I've gotten, like looks and even docs and this and that, like about him stimming or what have you. And it's like, gosh, just, put yourself in, I always try like a true empath. I always put myself in other people's shoes, and you don't
Yes.
know
Yeah.
the story. You don't know what led to that. You could go in a debate about vaccines and this and that, but at the end of the day, let's like lift everyone up and like meet them
Yeah.
where they are. And
Yeah.
I think, luckily we've been seeing a holistic doctor, not to switch gears, for Grayson, but we've seen huge, huge strides. And I mean, we've done like the heavy metals, the vitamins, the supplements, and it's all out of pocket, but it's worth every penny. I will never go to a Western med doc unless I break my arm
Hmm.
or I need heart surgery,
Yes.
but
I love that
I
you brought
mean,
this up though. I love that.
yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that could be a topic for a whole nother day, but just to tie back into, the generational trauma and everything, like when it came down to it, my dad had a very hard time accepting it, that he was different, and he couldn't even say the word. And
Oh
there
wow.
was a time where um, my parents were watching. It was actually Don and I were out for what would have been 15 wedding anniversary.
Hmm.
We were out to dinner at our favorite restaurant, Simon's, in Des Moines, and my kids were over at my parents. At that time, things were, you know,
Yeah.
tolerable. I don't know, I should say,
Not
but
great, but tolerable.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But I still entrust them, to keep my kids safe
Yeah.
because I would never put them in an unsafe situation, and they were, very good. Well, anyways, Grayson had asked my dad if he could ride his bike down to, so they lived in a cul-de-sac, still do, and if they could live or ride down to, where the tall grass is. And my dad's talking to the neighbor, like, yeah, yeah, as long as I can see you. Well, Grayson's very literal, and
Oh,
some kids with autism, once they have their mind set on something, they're going to go do it. He got the okay. So he went on this whole joyride all through Carlisle. And I mean,
oh
it
no.
was to the point my parents were just like, I would hope sick to the stomachs about it and everything. And they had to get the police involved, the fire station. Well, I mean, he went on a joyride all the way to the park. He went to the ice cream shop. I mean,
Oh my
where
goodness.
didn't he go? But thank God, I mean, I joke about it, but thank God he was fine and he was found safe. But it's like to really reevaluate things. And when I had asked my dad, because we had left the restaurant, we had just gotten our appetizer out, and we had to leave. And and I'm on the phone, and my mom's like, "Well, I think they found him." I'm like, "You think? Either they did or they didn't. Like, there's no in between. Like, this is
Right.
my freaking worst nightmare." And luckily, he was found. He was, safe, unharmed. But that's a life of a mom on the spectrum. The eloping is always so relevant. But
Hmm.
even after that, like I could tell my parents were very distraught and like sick about it and everything. But I was just like, you know, so emotional. And I went up and up to them, and I was met with like just nothing back, and
Oh
that right
no.
there, like I'm like,
Did
oh,
that
that
solidify that for
hurts.
you?
Yes, it did. But then, and that was God saying, hey, listen, pay attention. I know they're your earthly mom and father, but if they cannot genuinely give you an embraced hug, because we don't hug, we don't
Hmm.
talk about emotions, nothing like that. But I was just like so overwhelmed. And I almost, as a true empath, went up to them and I, gave them a hug. I was like, well, he's fine now. Like, thank you. Like, I don't know why I was saying thank you because I'm an empath and that's what I do. But I was met with just limp body, no, yeah, it was really heartbreaking. So I think it was just kind of that was one of the big ones. And then we had the incident with, tennis and just berating me, berating my kids. And
Yeah,
I'm
that's
just like,
never pretty.
that's it. Enough's
Yes.
enough.
Yeah.
And, I will say one last thing here. I don't want to keep,
No,
dragging
go
this
ahead.
on,
No, it's
but
fine. It's fine.
at we were gonna try and we did boundaries and everything, but for Christmas, um, we met at my sister's house like we always do for Christmas Eve. And what does my dad get my kids for Christmas, you ask? For their Christmas gift?
What did you
Tennis
get?
rackets.
Oh
Tennis
no.
rackets.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I know, I'm like, are you serious? Like, is that not a narcissist? But again,
Yep.
from no one knows this. Like this is going to come out and it is what it is, but this is my truth. This is my story. But to everyone else, I mean, you are familiar with this.
Yeah.
They go out in public and they do all these things for the church, the community, the sick.
Hmm.
They have this persona, but they, they are some of the most unkind people. And I mean, right there, I feel like that was very malicious. And I looked over at my parents when my kids opened the tennis rackets, and I could tell my mom was visibly uncomfortable. And I'm sure she probably was like, yeah, we should probably not do this. But you know what? My dad's so set in his ways and he's going to want to do it. He's like, if they want to perceive it that way, yeah, there's no way my kids are going doing tennis. I'll take them on my own, but they're never going to do anything like that with you again. So
Exactly.
that kind of was another solidifier too.
Yeah. I'm so proud of you for sharing things though. Like I know we've had multiple conversations, but
Yep.
like it is just so empowering to be able to like share your truth and share what has
Hmm.
happened. And obviously like my ex-husband is a narcissist as well.
Sure.
So we both have different experiences with
Yeah.
narcissists, like, but I
Hmm.
mean, he kind of did the same thing when I'm gonna say my son because it's not his anymore, but
Hmm. Yeah, that's true.
he went on a bike ride around a pond and
Mm.
disappeared for a while,
Oh my.
and
Wow.
they never told me about it. And then he like my kids came home and they were like, oh, like we got lost and then we got locked in our room, and it was so they talked about the emotional abuse that they went
Oh,
through. And I just it's sometimes like narcissism is like so it's so strong. Like they are so
Yeah.
mean and they don't care
Mhm.
about who they
They
hurt
don't.
or
Nope.
anything. Like all of those feelings are gone and it's all about that
Yeah,
self-centeredness and that
absolutely.
gratification from I talk about this in in the episode of narcissism and I think
Mhm.
it says it perfectly and you can tell me if you agree. It's literally setting unrealistic expectations to watch a kid fail or watch
Yeah.
somebody fail, and that's where they get that gratification, and it's that's a
Mhm.
self-centered person, you know.
Mhm. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, that's
So
perfectly, I mean,
yeah,
described. And the sad thing is, like, a lot of these narcissists, even if they wanted to go see a therapist, and
yeah,
you know this from your field and research, even if they did, they're still going to think, well, they don't know what they're talking about. They're always so grandiose. And there's different degrees of narcissism and everything, but
yeah,
it's just a distorted reality. Like they're in a glass, or let's see, how do I want to describe, like a glass funhouse type thing, you know?
yeah,
And it's
yeah.
a distorted reality. When they look out, they're not the problem, you know?
Nope. Yep. And
So,
my ex-husband and I went to therapy and he was so perfect in therapy and as soon as we
mm-hmm.
left, and I don't remember if I've talked about this because I shared a little bit but not very
I don't
much
think
on
you
it.
have.
But
Mm-hmm.
as soon as that car door shut and we got into the
Oh,
car after therapy, I dreaded that moment because I knew
yep,
that was the moment everything was going to be turned back on me.
yep,
And it's a
yeah,
very like it really breaks your
scary.
self-esteem down too,
Oh, for
especially to
sure.
have narcissistic parents. Because I mean, I've dealt, and I haven't really opened up too much about it, but I have dealt with a lot of narcissism in my
Mm-hmm.
family, not
Sure.
necessarily like my own parents, but just like in my family as
Yeah.
just whole as a whole. And
Mm-hmm.
that feeling of kind of the black sheep or I know more than you because I have more life experience than you, and it's just kind of it, you know, when you have a family member tell you, well, maybe you shouldn't have had kids.
Ugh, that's just
That
a gut
just
punch. Yeah.
yeah, I remember crying. I cried so hard and I was met with so much resistance and non-validation when I tried talking about it that I
Mm.
just like blood does not make you family,
Exactly. Yep.
and that's something
Exactly.
that needs to be normalized.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, God gave you an earthly mother and father, you know, but
Yeah.
as far as like, you know, he also will test you and have you go through things and, you know, see if you are paying attention.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, you know, people that are narcissistic, they did not heal their, you know, childhood wounds. Unfortunately, they did not get the needs met that they were entitled to.
Yeah.
You know, they just continue to repeat the cycle and the same pain was inflicted, and you know it's just one of those toxicities. You're like, I got to cut the cancer out, and that's essentially what we're doing, and
Yep.
it's been pretty life changing, so to say the least.
I mean, I'm happy for you guys though that you are finding
Thank
that
you.
peace, and that makes me happy because you are such a great mom. Oh my gosh, I think you're incredible.
Thank
And
you. You
like
as well.
thank you. Thank you. Like I feel we are like obviously we're second cousins, but like I feel like you are
Hmm.
like the closest relative that I have
Yes,
because
yes.
we have such
Same.
good conversations.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's, I mean, it takes a village, and like I'm okay with my village being small, as I know you are, and you know, you can be more selective in who you let in. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's just one of those, you know,
It's
letting
hard.
it all out and just always being there and being your best self. Every day you wake up, you should strive for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And strive to like and one thing I think too that helps me is like accepting the reality that like I have to let go of what I can't change. I can't force relationships. I can't force interaction.
Mhm.
I can't force somebody to see me in a certain light. Even though I want that, like even though I used to crave like interactions with my first cousins and my aunts and uncles and my grandma and grandpa. Like I used to crave all of that, and my dad's family lives farther away, and I just didn't have that because we didn't have the physical closeness, and so I used to crave that, and because that's what I was told, like, you know, your family, you have to be close to your family and you have to what, you know, this is how it goes, and you have that expectation, but then when you're met with that like, well, you know, I'm older than you, or you know, then you get treated like a little child in your, you know, in your 20s or 30s, like that makes me just
Hmm.
feel bad.
Yeah.
And
And
I
it shouldn't be that way. That's not healthy, you
no.
know?
And I've admitted, like, I've been toxic. Like, I was really immature, but I feel like I was doing that because I was an only child. And
Sure.
so
Yeah.
I felt isolated. And, I didn't want to be treated like a little kid. I have kids. I wanted my kids to grow up around my family, but I don't
Yeah.
know if I'll ever get that. I just
Yeah.
don't know. So,
Yeah. And that's okay. You know, at the end of the day, you're doing the best thing for them and keeping them safe and out of harm's way. I
absolutely.
mean, girl, just look at you. Step back and look at you. You're
Oh,
everything
thank
that's
you.
happened, like literally everything that's happened in your life, you're freaking handling it and you're doing amazing. You work hard, you're strong. You're the most ambitious person starting this podcast and like
Thank you.
hammering them out. And we're like, we want more. Like, you're just resilient. And that's a testament, you know, to everything you've gone through. And you could have went the other way and you chose not to.
That's
You're the
actually
most
funny you said
loyal,
that.
respectful, like, yeah, for
Thank
sure.
you. Because I literally sat in my living room when everything happened, everything kind of fell
Mhm.
apart and unraveled. I sat there and I was like, okay, I can either like sit here and wallow in my pity
Sure.
and just
Hmm.
fall apart and fall to fucking shit.
Hmm.
Otherwise, the opposite, I could be resilient and help people and change things and make things better. And I was like, I really want to wallow,
Heck, I know
but
you really want to,
I'm like,
but
I'm
what's
really leaning
what's the
towards the
benefit of that?
left. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. That's just who you are, you know. You are just so genuine and loyal. Like, I just, it's so valuable because we don't see that enough in this world.
yeah,
And anyone who doesn't value what you bring to the table, they don't deserve to sit at your table. So
yeah,
that's kind of what I'm at that point in time in my life. And like, it is what it is, you know, and you don't need to stress, you don't need to worry about it. You just keep handling it.
yeah. Well, and I feel like I released that episode, the podcast that I was a guest on, that released last weekend, and I had
Hmm.
family who I talked about didn't even know what I was going through, or
Oh yeah,
people in my life who were like, "Oh, was he really that bad?" And I was like, "Yeah, he was really that bad." It seemed good. I mean, you knew me in
sure.
that time period of my life too. I feel like
Yeah,
I tried really hard to be
you're a
positive.
good actress.
I
Yeah,
mean, I was trying to,
yeah.
but
Like,
I was scared. I was so scared, and I was living in denial so much
mm-hmm.
that I just tried to make everything work. And in the reality, like that wouldn't have mattered how hard I tried.
Exactly.
It just,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah. And sometimes we gotta, you know, go through these hardships and this heartache. But it's to teach us, you know, persistence and perseverance and, you know, just to be the best advocate just all around. And it sucks, you know, that people go through stuff like that. But it also is just kind of like setting you up for just the most amazing, beautiful experience if you can get through and weather that storm like you have. And girl, whew, did
yes.
you ever?
I
But
mean, I've
you,
been through some shit,
yeah,
like,
that's,
but I don't talk about it a lot. Like, I mean, this is
yeah,
so up until now, this has been like
yeah.
the first time I've started to talk about it. And I was like, you know what? I'm watching all these other people who I know go through things, and I'm seeing that they don't have a lot of support. And I didn't
Hmm.
have that support, so I want to be that support for somebody else. And if I could just make
Absolutely.
one small change in somebody's life, then that it makes it all worth it for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. That's for
Well,
sure.
I ask all of anyone who comes on, except my husband,
Oh
I don't think
Lord.
I've asked him, what are like what are the three top qualities that you see in yourself, and how do you think you can improve upon those?
Oh, I should have thought about this ahead of
I
time.
don't
I
tell
knew you
anybody.
asked this too.
I want it to be off the top of your head because that's what happens if you
Yes.
think about it. Then you have too much time to kind of like plan.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Okay, because I have ADHD, can you re-ask that? Because I was sitting outside
So
and my neighbor is taking off his deck boards as we speak, and I'm too much
it's
stimulation.
okay.
So
What are
sorry.
no, it's okay. What are three qualities that you love about yourself, but that you can also improve upon, or three
Hmm,
things that are tied to that you can kind of like pathway off of that?
three things. Okay. Let's see. I guess. That's in three. You're not asking for just one.
I
I'm
want
trying to.
three. I
Oh
can
my
name one
gosh.
for you. You're strong as fuck. So
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I guess being strong and like, I guess going hard, 110%. Whenever I take on anything,
Yes.
110% is what I do. Sometimes I need to be like, okay, girl, take a chill pill, sit down, like, let's think before we go, advocate, research, find all the things, and just like leading with grace. Like, I find myself like, putting that out there and I mean again just trying to meet people where they're at, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to be everyone's cup of tea, and I
Right.
understand that, and that's okay, but I think I'm pretty cool. So
You're pretty
I have a
awesome.
lot of
Yeah,
small network of friends, and like those people I value their opinions. I would say yeah, that would definitely be one.
for sure.
um Ooh, just loving fiercely. Like because I didn't get that unconditional love. It was always strings attached. I love to a fault. I'm an empath. I want to help everyone, and I've realized, you can't do that to everyone. You can't help people that don't want to help themselves.
Preach it. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
absolutely
and
true.
sometimes people take that as like, um, you know, well, however they take it, I don't know.
People
But
can
at
get
the end of the
offended by
day,
that. Yeah, they can get
yes.
offended. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's their own internal healing that they got going on, and
Yeah.
all you can do is pray for them. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Um, what the third one? Let's see. Stretching myself too thin. Like I always want to be a helper and involved in, the school, the advocating for animals. We foster
I love
dogs,
that
and
about you guys. I
thank
love that.
you.
That's one of my
Yeah.
favorite things. Yeah.
Shout out to Big Mutt Networks. They're amazing. They're not located here in Iowa. We have fantastic ones in Iowa, but my heart always goes to the big mutts, like the Great Danes, the
Hmm.
Mastiffs, like you name it. But then they have the itty bitty guys that are just such a beautiful thing. And we had such amazing experience. And I mean, if that's one thing I can use this platform for is to like check into
Hmm.
fostering because they provide the food, the medical, and there's so many dogs, as you know, that are out in the shelters.
Absolutely.
um, it's like I stretch myself very thin in all the places, and I'm trying to learn this year how to rein that in or be more efficient in how I do that. So I would
For
say
sure.
that's probably my third.
I love that. No, those are all fantastic. And I love your dog posts when you post everything. Those are my favorite.
Oh, thank you.
We have a shelter dog too.
Yeah, they're the best.
They are. Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm so happy. We're gonna have to do
Yes,
more episodes because we
for sure.
for any of the listeners, we can deep dive way deeper
Oh,
into
yes.
conversations and topics.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you're doing amazing things and we want to hear more of it. So
Thank you.
I've already stretched myself so thin, but anytime, I mean, I'm not going to do a podcast, but I'm like, how do you do this? Like you're in everything and it's so amazing and beautiful, but
Thank you.
I'm always here to help out and advocate and, whatever you need. If you have a certain topic that you think I would be a good fit, I'm happy to help.
I have a
But I
couple
just,
that I was going to tell you about. I
I
think
love
like
it. Yeah,
three different topics for sure that I can think of off the top of my head.
absolutely. Yeah, I
But
mean, you could just keep doing it. I'm just in awe, like awe-inspired, like how you just do it all and you still have a smile at the end of the day. But that's,
thank
the
you.
type of breed that we are. We,
We are. Yeah.
we'll go through fire and hell and back, and we're still standing. We may not, well, I'll speak for myself here because you're gorgeous. But I was like, we may not, look the best like we did years ago, but you know what? It's brought us to so much peace and so much beauty in this world, and I would do it all over again.
Well, you look
So,
fabulous and gorgeous,
oh,
so you
well,
have
thank
no
you.
room to talk about
Yeah,
that. You are beautiful. No,
thank you.
I feel like out of any family member, like I feel like you and I are like I'm the closest to you. Like you
Hmm.
are one of my closest friends, and
Yes,
I love you with all
absolutely.
my heart.
Thank you. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
nice to have another one that is, on the same page with not only, the food and I mean, gosh, I could get into all that, but
Oh, for
you're
sure.
just,
Well,
you're a good example. So keep it up.
I mean, we've been through what the Valentine's Day dinner at the little church that we went to. The
Oh
girls.
my
Do
gosh, I
you remember
forgot about
that?
that. Yes.
That
That
popped
was
up
so
in
cute.
February and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like that was so funny.
Wow.
But yeah,
Yes.
we've been through a lot It's been a
Wow,
lot.
looking back, yeah, no kidding. I mean, would you ever imagine we would be the people we are today
No, absolutely not.
when we
No,
first met? No,
no,
not at all. I
not at
thought my
all.
life was being, and that's the funny thing is like I am such a planner, as I know you are too.
Yeah,
And I always say, you make plans and God laughs. Like, here after 8 years of being married, Don and I are like, let's have some kids. And 5 years into that, not happening, did the whole fertility journey. And, it's such a beautiful thing. When you go through a struggle, when
yes,
I struggle or when I suffer or anything, I'm like, thank you, God. Like, that's my new, like, outlook on it is thank you for bringing this to my attention because it's a learning, it's a growth. It's always, a room for improvement. And
yeah,
I mean, that's how I try to look at things now. Life's too short
it
and you got to
is.
take your time and use your time to the best of its ability.
Yeah, use
And the
your time
little
wisely.
things are the big things, you know all that.
Well, and I've planned my whole life out when I was younger, and it took like, I mean, I laugh because I feel like I went on a back road roller coaster through the fucking boonies. Like, it
Yeah.
went way south real quick.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And I've had to learn to
Oh man.
adjust, but I like where it's
Yeah.
at. And, Andrew and I've had to work through our
Oh,
issues, and we've been through a
sure.
lot as a married couple, and he's stepped up as a dad, and I think that's beautiful. And
Amazing. He is amazing. Like that's truly a gift from God right there. And every marriage
yeah,
is hard. Whether,
yes,
you've been through, everyone has their own stuff, right? Don and I, oops, hello?
yes, I'm here. Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. Sorry, my phone. Oh, it warned me it's 20%. I can live on 20%. We're good.
My phone almost
Um,
crashed yesterday. I had to get a new one. So that's a little
oh,
off topic, but yeah, because that I
yeah.
did that yesterday. So
Yeah, I actually got rid of my iPhone because of the radiation, like you deep dive into the studies, we went over and switched to Motorola for like
oh, do
the
you like that?
yeah, I do. I do. It's a learning curve. I don't have everything transferred over, living flying by the seat of my pants like normal, but I do like
Yeah.
it. And I got the Razor, so it literally is like a flip
Ooh,
phone,
I
which
love
is
that.
kind of fun. So
That's awesome.
I
Yeah,
like it a
for
lot.
people who don't know, your
Uh-huh.
iPhone actually has a radiation warning, and you can
Yes.
actually get cancer from having your iPhone too close to
Yeah.
you. And
Another podcast.
yep, it's in it. We're gonna deep dive into stuff like that too. Heavy
Yes, girl.
metals, parasites. Anyone who wants
Oh,
to
all
learn
the
about
things.
parasites in your gut. And I tell
Oh,
people, if you think you don't have parasites, you're
you're crazy.
delusional. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
What was
Um,
it like 90% of people have them? Like,
yeah,
yeah. If
yeah.
you have pets, you got them, like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, we're
Yeah.
gonna have to deep dive
So
into that
funny.
next time. But oh
Yes,
my
for
gosh.
sure.
Thank you for coming on.
Yes,
I'm
of
gonna end
course.
the recording, but I'll stay on with you for a second.
Okay,
So
beautiful.
thank
Thanks for
you.
having me.
Yeah, okay. All right. Till next time, you guys. We will see you later.
Bye.
Bye.